Hi, I'm Kevin Werbach, professor of legal studies and business ethics at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. For decades, I've studied emerging technologies, from broadband to blockchain. Today, AI is promising to transform our world. But AI needs accountability, mechanisms to ensure it's developed and deployed in responsible, safe, and trustworthy ways. On this podcast, I speak with the experts leading the charge for accountable AI. On this episode, I speak with Kerry, Distinguished Visiting Fellow at the Brookings Institution and former Acting Secretary and General Counsel of the U.S. Department of Commerce. He has been at the forefront of conversations around privacy, data protection, and AI governance, both at the national and the global level. In our conversation, we dig into the state of AI policy today, how privacy and AI connect, what lessons to take from the long effort to pass federal privacy legislation in the U.S., and the key elements of agile regulation for AI. Cam, always great to talk to you.
Well, Kevin, it's great to see you and nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
So let me start by asking, how in general would you describe the current moment we're in let's start with AI policy.
That encompasses an awful lot of uncertainty, I guess. But let's focus on AI. Like a lot of other things, in some turmoil, but I think with a little bit more consensus, to some extent internationally. I think certainly so domestically. It's one of the few relatively bipartisan issues, and there are certainly notes of difference, but I think on the substance, a lot in common. If you look at what the Trump administration has done, there's a lot of points in common with the Biden administration, and the Biden administration built on things that the first Trump administration did.
Where would you say those points of agreement are? Because I would tend to agree with you, but obviously rhetorically there's a lot of difference, and you hear a lot of people in the current administration saying what they're doing is totally different.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right, Kevin. I think there's a lot of rhetoric that's performative, talking about woke AI, about sort of the approach of innovation and unleashing things. I think there certainly are elements in that. I think, with the involvement of some of the Silicon Valley voices that are sort of particularly anti-regulation and libertarian, there are elements of that in the policy. But there's also, I think, a lot of substance to like. Some of the rhetoric, as I said, is performative. Some is unhelpful. But I think you have a lot of substantive elements when it comes to measures to promote adoption in the federal government and otherwise, open source, and improving AI literacy. It talks about worker first AI. I mean, that to me sounds an awful lot like the Biden administration in some respects. Talks about an evaluation ecosystem, and that's built in the Office of Management Budget guidance that came out earlier in the year. And, all that, notwithstanding J.D. Vance's sneer about hand-wringing about AI safety among Europeans. There are certainly contradictory notes as well. I mean, there talks about the executive order, talks about the Trump executive order, the AI action plan, talks about combating synthetic media. same time, voices saying, no, we're in favor of deep fakes. Um, uh, Similarly, I think to my mind, the biggest contradiction is on science policy. It talks about investing in science, theoretical and computational and experimental science. It's hard to have that when you are cutting out so much of the investment base in scientific research and so much of the academic base as well.
Do you think we need legislation on AI? And then, if so, do you think we'll get it?
Ted Cruz was just yesterday saying, we ought to have some kind of legislation on AI, mostly, I think, to preempt state laws. Look, I was at the Department of Commerce. Its overarching function is to promote the foreign and interstate commerce of the United States. So I do believe in having, particularly in areas like information technology and communications, which are intrinsically interstate and international. We should have consistent national laws, whether that's in privacy or in AI. But I don't think we should completely preempt the field, which may be the intention here. But I think there are ways to get at this, to do some baselines that I think can be very helpful to thoughtful deployment, development of AI, without impairing innovation and without a heavy regulatory hand.
What about globally? Where do you see the key fault lines right now?
Well, it's interesting, Kevin. We're talking. I'm actually in New York. Where a couple 3 years ago, in the wake of ChatGPT, there was an enormous push towards global governance on AI. I think subsequently we've backed a little bit away from that, but there are certainly strains of that out there. But my view is you need to deal with AI in ways that can be a lot more agile. This is a global phenomenon, and research and development. A lot of the research teams are across institutions, across borders. Certainly, the data, the technology move quickly. So we need some alignment, but we need a system that operates a lot like the information technology networks that it runs on. That is networked, decentralized, with a lot of different nodes and points of contact. And I think we need that, Kevin, because there's so much that is unknown, and when it comes to AI, and it's going to take experimentation. It's going to take a lot of careful and thoughtful inquiry. And we are also seeing that AI is really not one thing.
Mm.
That notwithstanding the large language models and a lot of focus on that area, it's a lot of domains, a lot of functions. Those are multiplying. Um, and even the major large language model developers like OpenAI, like Anthropic, are tailoring the
Mhm.
models to very specific purposes, and they're different functions. We just saw it this week that people are seeing that Claude and OpenAI have uh, different evolving uses and
Mhm.
strengths. So Claude gets used a lot more for coding, OpenAI much more for uh, uh, interactions and search and
Mhm.
uh, generative language.
What does that mean for policy and regulation, though, that there is this
Yeah,
differentiation?
yeah. No, I think that is the key question.
Mhm.
Look, I think it needs to be um, extraordinarily agile um, and also extraordinarily alert. I mean, look,
Yeah.
there are going to be problems and dysfunction with AI. We know enough about it to know that's clear. What exactly some of those are going to be, we don't know. So, I think at both the organizational level as well as the governmental level, um, it needs to be done with a lot of intentionality,
But
um, and not driven by FOMO, but carefully applying best practices, benchmarks, measurements, and monitoring.
and what exactly does agile regulation mean in practice?
And so my thought is, where look, I think in practice, um, you know, organizations they're looking at this like the privacy professionals and lots of uh, in trade associations and other organizations, as well as leading developers, I think have developed fairly well established best practices and benchmarks and measurement tools. So to have some baseline requirements, to assess uh, AI models deployments uh, going in and uh, before release, before deployment um, is part of it. But then to monitor after deployment
Right.
and to continue to do that. And I say that in carpentry, the maxim is measure twice, cut once. Uh,
Yeah.
when it when it comes to AI development and deployment, it's measure, measure, and measure again. Um, and I think to have some basic uh, legal obligations to do that is given the state of the industry, given the state of best practices, is not a heavy lift.
Hmm. So do you think that the practice and the science around measurement for AI is good enough at this point to drive those kinds of decisions?
Look, I think there's a lot of work to be
Yeah.
done to develop a lot more measures, but so exactly what they are,
Mhm.
we don't know, but um, that can
Sure.
evolve. I think
Mhm.
here um, standards
Mhm.
development is going to be hugely important. There are, I think, process standards in place. ISO IEC has a risk management standard that sets some basic policy or practices in place. I was in a discussion, the International Telecommunications Union, this summer with a number of people and organizations involved in standards. And I think the consensus at the table was that process standards are easy, but there's so much in terms of the range of applications, the domains, the functions that are different, that product standards, we've got a long way to go.
You've done a great deal of work for many years on privacy policy. And famously or infamously, we still don't have comprehensive federal privacy legislation in the United States. Should that give us pause in terms of thinking about the capacity to rise to the AI moment?
Look, I think that is a great question, and I think we've got some of the same dynamics. I think in terms of complexity, in terms of some of the industry interests that have ended up blocking things in the privacy area over the years. But I think in both of those cases, there's certainly for this polarized era, a lot of bipartisanship. There was a congressional task force, in the last Congress, did, I think, some good work on outlining some of the basic issues for privacy legislation, and which I think is much along the lines of what I said about what could be in legislation. So I'm hopeful if we go forward to and adopt some national legislation, it can be along those lines.
Mhm.
And that will do a tremendous amount to help inform where we go with in the future with regulation, and develop some standards that then set a baseline for industry expectations.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is whether you think that all these AI developments might reshape or change the debate around privacy.
I certainly hope so. I mean, look,
Mhm.
data is key here,
Mhm.
and it's clear that AI exponentially increases the privacy risks. Yeah, in the privacy debate, I mean, 10, 15 years ago, it was moving from focusing on which identifies personally identifiable information, information like identifier, social security numbers, other unique identifying information. But at the time, the realization that given big data and analytics, it was possible to identify people uniquely, based on data that didn't fit that personally identifiable data category. And so the privacy debate has moved to, in general, in state laws and federal drafts, to talk about information that is linked, personally identifiable information, or linkable to a specific individual or a device. Now with AI, what is linkable is almost anything.
Yeah.
And that, that really puts a premium on, I think, particularly developing privacy enhancing technologies,
Mhm.
ways to share information, to manage information, for example, in the corpus of a training data, so that you get the benefits of the training, um, but not expose individuals. And clearly, uh, with if you're doing scraping everything on the internet, you're sweeping a lot more individuals into that training data.
Oh, absolutely. No, and that's what I was going to ask you about that. You talked about the you know political issues and corporate incentives and so forth that made it
Mhm.
so difficult on privacy. Now it seems like we've ramped that up even more. We're now, as you say, it's talking about all data, and we're talking about it. It's so central to these frontier models that they have access to all of this data. You know, where does the pressure come from to appropriately address these privacy concerns?
Um, that's been a challenge
Yeah.
because people talk about the privacy paradox.
Mhm.
The notion that people express concerns about privacy but don't act on it. I think part of that is it's just so damn hard.
Mhm.
And it's far more than any of us could do. No matter how sophisticated you are about technology or managing your privacy. I don't know any privacy experts who can do all of the things that in theory we ought to do to protect our privacy. I certainly don't. Um, and we rely on a certain level of trust. I think we
Mhm.
need some legal bases on how data is used to really give a foundation to that trust. And I think, that will do, I think, in the long run, a tremendous amount to enable sort of the free flow and use of data.
Mm.
Um, I firmly believe that uh, general information is a public good. That getting access to uh, data, including personal data, can be enormously beneficial, both to individuals and to society and to the
Mhm.
store of human knowledge. But we need ways
Mhm.
to ensure that that's done appropriately.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm curious on your thoughts on this. One of the things that I've noticed in talking to lots of enterprises about AI governance is in many cases, to the extent that they feel like they have some foundation, it starts with privacy and it starts with,
Yeah.
frankly, GDPR implementation in many cases, even if it's an American company.
Yeah.
The ones that say, okay, we actually had to ask these questions about what are we collecting, what's the provenance. So it would seem like there's potentially an incentive there for companies to say, well, we don't like regulation, but we know we've got to understand our
Yeah.
data just for AI to deploy it. So do you see that
Mhm.
happening too?
Um, yeah, I have seen that. I mean, I certainly, after I left the Obama
Mm.
administration in 2013, about a year or so later, I affiliated with a law firm and
Mm.
I was involved in uh, counseling boards on cybersecurity,
Mm.
advising clients on privacy, including implementation of the GDPR, implementation the initial California
Mm.
privacy law, um, and what would say to boards is um, this is all about governing your data, um, and for both privacy and particularly for cybersecurity, where they sort of clearly have interest in protecting information. If you don't know what data you're collecting, it, how it's being used, you can't protect it. And more broadly, in this digital era, that is also what you need to have a digital strategy, and that applies exponentially to AI. So much of AI in the enterprise context is sort of taking the tools, taking the models, using that to analyze the data that exists within the enterprise, whether it's marketing communications, the body of corporate emails. It's really giving a lot of life to the business intelligence component, and really at long last enabling, I think, enterprises to make sense of a lot of that, to take what's been unstructured data and make sense of it using essentially language. But knowing what that data is, and how it flows is at the baseline of having that kind of strategy.
What do you think companies most need in order to be effective in that effort? Either in terms of just incentives or knowledge, or where public policy could actually help.
I think some of the baselines that we've talked about around assessment, can help. I don't know that that they can get to the specificity that any particular company would have to apply that in ways that help them. I think you need to look at the tools that are out there, but now the model developers are putting out assessments of the usage and of their models, and how that plays out. And a lot of the companies and platforms that are doing this are putting out information on what some of their tools, their key performance indicators, their benchmarks are. And I think that creates sort of a body of resources that people can look at and say, all right, what do we need in our business environment? What can we adopt?
And then just going forward, what do you see over the next, say, 1 or 2 years, whether AI generally, privacy policy, globally, what should people be most focused on in terms of understanding how all this is going to evolve?
Boy, Kevin,
I saved the hardest one for last.
Yeah, really.
If you get this one right, you pass the test.
I've been, the optimist about getting privacy legislation done, because I saw a pathway and saw that there was the possibility that people were actually working on something that could get there by that pathway. And I've occasionally been called, as a result, a ridiculous optimist. It's harder for me to sustain optimism given
Mm.
given the experiences that we've had. We can, very close to privacy legislation in 2002. In 2022.
Mm.
But we have basically two members of Congress who blocked it, and and less because of industry, but just for political reasons of their own. And that was Nancy Pelosi, who would not bring in a bill that was passed out of committee with a heavy vote in favor, wouldn't bring it to the floor. And in the Senate, the chair of the Commerce Committee, Maria Cantwell, didn't join the other three committee leaders in sponsoring the bill. I think had either of them done differently, that could very well have passed. And now there's not the same sort of momentum that we had then. So I think the answers are really going to have to come bubbling up from underneath, from the process that I've talked about, the assessment, the deployment, the experience, the monitoring. That's what is going to teach organizations. And ultimately, I think what's going to teach societies and governments. That is, I think, the sort of networked decision-making that I've talked about.
Great, Cam. Thanks so much. Great to talk to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kevin. I enjoyed talking to you.
This has been The Road to Accountable AI. If you like what you're hearing, please give us a good review and check out my Substack for more insights on AI accountability. Thank you for listening. If you want to go deeper on AI governance, trust, and responsibility with me and other distinguished faculty of the world's top business school, sign up for the next cohort of Wharton's Strategies for Accountable AI online executive education program, featuring live interaction with faculty, expert interviews, and custom-designed asynchronous content. Join fellow business leaders to learn valuable skills you can put to work in your organization. Visit execed.wharton.upenn.edu/ACAI for full details. I hope to see you there.